every interaction we have is a chance to build on trust or tear it down. And so how we treat every interaction with each other, with customers, with vendors, is a chance to build on that trust if you handle it correctly. We do our best to remind everyone of that and to have them realize that in their day-to-day interactions with people, because it is that big of a deal. Everything you do either builds on trust or deteriorates it over time if you're not careful.
And when I was doing my research, you're around 650 locations now?
That's correct, yes.
That's incredible. When I was a kid, a long time ago, I actually painted a few vehicles, did the damage, with a Bondo and repaired all of that, changed out engines, clutches, transmissions. I loved the work. Did you love it back in the day? Where'd you get your experience around this?
Yeah, I did. I liked working on mechanical things. I liked working on my car. I got into the industry because I wrecked it when I was 16 and needed to learn how to fix it. So that's how I ended up getting in the body shop business in the first place. But I think cars were I know cars were a lot simpler back then. So you could get in there and see how they were put together and work on them. You open the hood today, and I think people are scared of it because it's so much electronics and not a lot more complicated than it used to be. But back when I grew up, you just jumped right in and started doing stuff on your car. It's pretty normal, I think.
Yeah, it was a lot easier back then. Even I raced motorcycles, same thing, would overhaul them before each race and, went through all of it. All right. So going from 1 in 99, I think you had in the 20 range around 2020, and then it jumped to 650 in the last 5 years. That's crazy. So from whatever that was to over a couple $1 billion in revenue. So here's a question. I'd love to know how you think about this. So I've started 8 companies from scratch. I've had some really good exits, and I never had this exact plan. I was just directionally, I knew where I wanted to go, and I could never see where I landed or where I'm at today, 30, 40 years ago. But I was open to opportunities, and it wasn't a laid out plan. So how did you think about that? Because my guess is you weren't, hey, I'm going to do these 8 steps and I'll have a $2 billion company in revenue, down the road. What was that like for you?
Yeah, very similar to what you described. I never sat at my desk or the kitchen table and plotted out how to go from one shop to 650 or, a few million in revenue to billions in revenue. It very much evolves over time, or at least it has in my experience. You start out just trying to make $1, trying to make a living. And then you go to expanding to shop number 2 and number 3. Then it went to the idea of becoming a strong regional company, and then growing beyond that. A little bit of what threw a lot of fuel on the fire was I kind of had maxed out doing what I could do with debt. Was looking for a mezzanine debt, or something to grow another few shops, and that ended up leading to a private equity conversation and headed that route. So that's what really ignited the growth path way beyond what I had originally been thinking. And I think it continues to evolve. So now I think about things and I don't put any limits on where we could go. There's not really an end goal in mind, which is kind of what you described. You just keep making progress every year, trying to make it a better company, trying to grow it. And I don't really have an end target in mind.
Yeah, I've hired thousands of people over the years, and I feel so great about that and working with them and their families and getting to know everyone, just amazing. And I've had a few employees over time say, how come these things don't just happen for me? And I'm going, gosh, this is welcome to my 30-year overnight success story.
Right.
What were, and now I guess we're over a 40-year overnight success story, but what were the biggest challenges as you went through that? Because, 1 to, 20 something over, about 19, 20 years, what were your biggest challenges that you kind of went through as a leader during that time?
So we're talking before the major scaling.
In the major scaling, yeah.
Yeah. For me, I had a partner in the first location. He was 20 years older than me and wasn't quite to the point of retirement, and also didn't like the industry anymore. He had a few locations besides the one that we had together. So really, I was a minor partner in that arrangement, so I couldn't grow it for those first 15 years until he was ready to retire and give me a number. So really, it was making the best I could out of the one shop for those years. Once he was ready to retire, I felt a little bit um kind of like caged and finally released and ready to go. We're great friends and it was a great partnership, so I don't mean it like that, but from a desire to grow it compared to somebody who's looking at winding it down, I had for a long time been wanting to go pretty quick and growing it, and so jumped from the one to four locations within 18 months or so. Had one that I was doing from the ground up from scratch, what we would call a greenfield. Had another one that I worked uh, on buying from someone. So that was the first expansion, buying someone else's business where I knew I could bring some more accounts and some more revenue to. I was doing one from the ground up, and then out of nowhere came one that was a struggling business that they were looking to exit it. And made a deal with the landlord to take it over. So intentionally had the two, thinking about building the third one, and then the fourth one came out of nowhere, which was something that I just couldn't pass up. I think the struggles in the early days were because I didn't have any money. I did it from scratch, and one wrong move kind of brings it all down if you're not careful. I remember at the five shop mark, in that environment, I had one location doing really well, making money. A second one kind of breaking even, a third one making a little bit, and then the other two were losing money. So I was really nervous about opening location number six, because if location number six wasn't profitable out of the gate, we weren't going to survive. So there was there was always the capital challenge for me, and then there was the revenue growth and get accounts challenge, because our industry, for example, is very much insurance referred. And a lot of those relationships, even back then, started to shift to larger companies because there's so much more efficiency from an insurance carrier perspective in dealing with a single point of contact at a much bigger operation to get consistency. Um, it's easier for them dealing with a few bigger companies rather than hundreds of small ones. So I was just a small one. And so that always led to a lot of relationship development in order to get business, in order to get accounts. So I would describe both getting revenue, getting accounts, building those relationships, and capital as kind of my biggest initial challenges that I had to work at overcoming.
Yeah. And how did the initial, 19, 20 years prepare you to be able to do this at scale? I'm assuming you learned a lot of things that had you not learned them, you could have tripped.
Yeah, you know, it really I describe it as it was always a struggle. And I spent a lot of years wanting to get rid of struggle. I remember even uh, purposely thinking about, like, I'd love to get rid of struggle in my life, but I kind of pivoted at some point. Can't really identify exactly when, but I came to a realization that that's really where all the opportunity in life lies. Without struggle, you don't, you, that's where the creativity comes. That's where the new ideas come from. That's where the challenge of doing something good really comes out of. And so it's all of those things that were a struggle all along were preparing me for all the struggles that were still to come, and really the mindset around them, because your mind, right, its job is to protect you. And so when you live in that kind of a mindset of wanting things to be easy, wanting the struggle or the challenge to go away, it doesn't allow you to do this stuff at the scale that we've been able to do. So whatever challenges they might have been, from not having enough money to make payroll next week, or not knowing what to do to expand the business and trying to win over another customer where I was probably up against somebody that might even been better than me at the time. All of those challenges are what prepared me to meet the challenges as the companies began to scale.
Yeah. It's interesting. I feel like we've gotten to a place where if it becomes hard, something must be wrong. And yet, all the opportunities there. I love the way you said that. It's absolutely perfect. And changing perspective, I think is really the key going through that. Yeah.
I think now I almost get uncomfortable when things start to get a little bit easy because you worry about what's going to go wrong. You almost get more comfortable in the space of you've got identified challenges that you're dealing with and you have a game plan and you're executing it. Like that's where I think uh, I thrive. Whereas if things are going really, really well, I get nervous as to what's about to go wrong.
And I think that's the right top leadership perspective to have. And I've said for a long time, the harder it gets, if you're doing the work right, the harder you laugh. And
Yeah.
that's what I noticed with my teams going through it. It's just fun. And um, for leaders, I don't think my view is you're never done. There's always stuff to do. You might lower the hopper a little bit. You come in the next day, it's filled up again. How do you handle? I mean, what's your mindset around? You're literally never done. And I used to have a partner when I had business said, I love going home and picking up the dog poop because I could start and finish something and feel a sense of accomplishment. But as a leader, it's like you can't, So talk about that. What's your mindset there?
Yeah. So the great thing now of having some scale is I have a whole team of people working with me on those problems. So it's easier to attack a lot of them at once. Where when it was smaller, it was literally you almost feel alone in the fight, so to speak. The the challenges to me are what paying attention to what your most important ones are and always addressing those first. You can get so occupied with small problems while the big ones uh, are there and not being tackled is a big mistake. So you really want to always be paying attention to the biggest ones first. For this industry, because it's a service industry, it's very people dependent. A lot of the problems, once you beyond needing capital, right? Everything else is usually people driven. So from when I was small, trying to attract talented people to come work for me when you're just a small company and there's big companies with a lot to offer, to figuring out at scale how to keep everyone in the company enjoying where they work and having the culture expand at scale. All of the challenges that are primary in my mind because of this type of business revolve around the people. There will always be other issues that come along, but if we can get the people one right, it takes care of a lot of the other ones.
Yeah. As you went through the scale, I'm assuming, like most businesses that have lots of locations, you've got a few that are superstars, you have a lot of solid performers, and you have a few that are challenged in their performance. What have you learned around standardizing the approach to making each location successful as you're going through this scale? Because my guess is you're going to go from 650 to 2,000 in the next 5 years, and
That's the plan. Yep.
you're going to learn a lot. What have you learned at this point about standardizing an approach for each successful or for each location to be successful?
I'll say this first and come back to it. It really starts with the leader in that shop, in that location. So that's the key. The other way is just like anything, the 80-20 rule applies. 20% are probably going to be your best shops. 20% are going to be your worst shops. And really what we feel the job to do is manage up to 60% in the middle. The top 20% are always going to do really, really well. Just give them targets and let them go. The middle are the ones that we can try to manage up. And then the bottom 20, probably it's a need to manage those group of leaders out is probably the case. But what I've seen time and time again is the importance of picking the right leader in each location, because every employee's experience there in that shop, and how much they like the company, how much they believe in what we're doing, how well they're able to do it, all is dependent on that local leadership, because they don't really work for me anymore. They may never meet me, because getting around to 650 locations consumes a lot of time. So we spend a lot of time growing the leadership of each location, because we feel that manager is the key to the happiness of the customers in that market, the happiness of the team in that market, their skill level, their ability to communicate, their sense of urgency, their ability to worry about what's important, to do the hard things and create value is key to our success. So getting that right is a lot of our focus.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then the refinement on just business processes. This is how an order comes in and how we interact with insurance companies. I'm assuming that's all refined itself over time as well.
Yeah, process continues to evolve. We take a mindset of trying to make the business as easy as possible on the team. You have to deliver a great result for the customer, for insurance partners, treat your vendors properly, etc. But as a company, what we feel our role in that is make a hard job as easy as we can, which would be in those processes. Don't develop processes or weed out duplicate efforts, things that require you to do things 2 or 3 times, things that make an already difficult thing hard is what we really try to refine over time. In that kind of I guess I'll stop there for that question. Processes are key. The next piece of it is you can have the process. It's also people's adhering to the process that matters. So you really have to find a way to explain why you're doing what you're doing, get buy-in around it, and rally the team to execute on them, because a process not executed on doesn't do any good either.
Yeah. One of my companies was in aerospace, thousands of customers in 60 countries around the world, a lot of team members. And I got to where I would, getting everybody to follow everything. It was crazy when you look at aviation. So I would make the process that needed to be adhered to present itself in real time when it needed to happen. That was how I got around it. But boy, it was a number of years, frustratingly kind of pulling what little hair I had out, trying to figure out how to make it go. Something I've heard you say in listening to other podcasts that you've been on is if the team members aren't having a great experience, a great place to work, how your customers are never going to have an amazing experience. So talk through that and how you got it right on the culture to make that happen at scale. It's super impressive.
Yeah, learn that from a mentor, that it's impossible to create a great customer experience without a great employee experience first. And it really is trying to give the people a chance to succeed. So the manager was one that I talked about, the leadership. We know that we're going to need to train them when they're in the role. So you can't just hand them the keys and say, we'll check in a couple of weeks and see how it's going. We know that most of our management team comes from the shop, where they know how to fix cars, take care of customers, but it doesn't necessarily make them a great leader of people. It doesn't necessarily make them great communicators. And so we take it on ourselves to train those things. We, for example, for our management team, we have 3 weeks of general training that we put them through in the first, hopefully the first few months that they're here. And one is strictly to deal with culture. The second is, what do I do day to day to do the job well? And then the third is the people skills, the communication part of it. Now that's just a foundation of what they have to have, but leaving it to chance doesn't work. So we have to teach it. And then you're basically performance managing it. So I think all companies do quartile management, companies of scale anyway. You're looking at what the top 25% do compared to the bottom 25%. And then you're taking what basically the winning group is doing and trying to teach that to everybody else in the organization and get them doing the same things, to move the needle. And then a major effort has always been around taking your top performer and your bottom performer and trying to close the gap in how wide that performance difference is. And you do that slowly but surely over time. It's a work in progress even today, but the more we can get everybody making progress, the more we can narrow the band between what's good and what's bad. And the more that we get everybody understanding where we're headed, the better off we are.
Well, it's going really well and you're moving incredibly fast. I see somewhere in the future a book titled something like The Crash Champion's Way with all this stuff that you're discovering. So I can't wait for that to come out. What's it like working with, or maybe a better way to frame this question, what are your tips for successfully working with a PE? Because I've had friends that have worked with private equity companies that brought no value whatsoever, and things plodded along. Some that really enhanced everything, and others that destroyed it. So, how did you make it work? What are your tips?
I think as the founder, and because I've stayed heavily invested, I've been given maybe a little bit more leeway in that relationship than others might if they're coming in as hired executive team, right? So really, in my experience, it's been great, as in the PE has offered, even when I was really small and needed to learn a lot, the PE was helpful where they needed to be, but allowed the culture piece and how to fix cars and the team to me. They didn't really, and even today don't really intrude in that. Now, the way to manage it is to deliver on what you're promising them. If you're able to do what you say you're going to do and deliver consistent results, they tend to stay out of the way. If you start to struggle, or I always viewed it as if the business starts to struggle and start to not be able to perform in the way that we've promised that we could, we're just inviting them to dig in and take a look and see where they can help. So I viewed it as my job to do really well and keep them out of the weeds, is how I've went about it. I also think I've treated them the way I've treated employees and everybody else. So one of the things we live by is we say the difference is trust, because we feel in a service business like ours, trust is really important. People don't get in an accident very often, so that the process and what's going to happen to their car, which is typically a major asset for most people, they're concerned about what it's going to look like when it's done. Is it ever going to be okay? How do I deal with the insurance company? How long is it going to take? What are you going to do to my car? How am I going to get around in the meantime? We try to be very, very transparent and explain everything to the customer so that they can trust us. And that trust is super crucial. Well, managing up, I've kind of viewed it the same way. The more transparent I am with, I viewed them as a partner in my business. The more transparent I am with them about what we're working on, what we see developing, what we see as risks, what we see as upside potential. All of those things have been very, very transparent from the get-go. And so I guess I'm describing getting to a point where they trust you in that relationship as deeply and as quickly as possible, puts you in a great spot with a PE partner, I feel.
Yeah, and it sounds like a mindset that they need to get a really good return on this. And I've seen some partner with a financial partner, and they forget that, and then they do dig in, and it does create a lot of issues. What was your selection process like for our listeners that are looking for this kind of funding? How did you pick these folks? Because it's working incredibly well.
I think the selection is really the important time to be open and honest about your goals and their goals, and understand if you're not transparent, then you're only setting yourself up for a struggling relationship, I would think. So that's the time in the interview process where you figure out what's their investment thesis? What's their investment timeline? What are they hoping to do with your company once they're invested? What are their expectations going to be for how you run it? Are they, how much debt do you think we want to keep on the business? How much capital are we going to reinvest? Are we going to write another check ever? Or is it one time and then it's debt the rest of the way? Those are all important things to understand in selecting the partner. And I chose mine based on most closely aligned with what I wanted to accomplish the first time. The second time, it was a little bit different because um, besides trying to check all those things as much as I could, I had proactively approached Clear Lake because they were major bond investors in a body shop platform of about 350 shops that was really headed to bankruptcy. So public information about their financial position and things like that started to come out about a year ahead of time. I thought, first of all, as a competitor, I kind of knew what mistakes they were making, where they were going wrong. And second, I thought my team and I would know what to do to turn that platform around if we put the two together. And I saw it as an opportunity to really create a national footprint of a company. So I proactively went after them, way ahead of them even owning it, because it looked like to me they were going to own it. And I thought we had a great opportunity if we put the two together. So it wasn't just aligning with what we would do the business with after we're together. That was part of the focus. But then I saw in them also an opportunity of putting a platform together with it. So that tilted the decision making a little bit the second time.
Yeah, super smart. Makes a lot of sense. And you grew a lot through COVID. Was that, I would imagine in part, there's a lot of shops that were struggling and you were an amazing lifeline to help them, get through that. Was that an opportunity for you?
It was, and it was important for the PE group to think the same at that time, because our business, 50% of our revenue went away in the heart of COVID, right there in say May and June of 2020. It's a very high overhead business, and so at 50% of revenue, you're not profitable, and so you need a little bit of confidence that the world's going to return to normal, and that's pretty hard to do in the heat of the moment. Um, with the way things work, um, you basically, I viewed it as we had two options in in that kind of time frame of COVID. We were either going to ride the business out all the way until it returned to normal, and then you get it in a world where a lot of things are judged on your trailing 12 months. We would either sit and wait, ride it out, and then get the business for another year after that performing well, or we would get really aggressive and try to outrun it. Thankfully, the PE group kind of saw it the same. So we got really, really aggressive. We waited till September, October, to where we feel things had kind of um, stabilized, I would call it, a little bit. It was nowhere near back to normal, but it was a little bit stabilized. And then we went as aggressive as we could, taking advantage of everybody else's kind of uncertainty, desire to still move on from their business, et cetera. And we had a pretty good confidence that we would be able to ramp all of the combined business pretty heavily coming out the other side of COVID once we got there. If the private equity group wasn't of that same mindset, though, like, it could have went the other way, where we just sat on our hands and waited it out.
Yeah. Well, super smart move. One thing I've wondered about is, technology comes out, big changes and it disrupts in a big way, or at least has potential to. If autonomous vehicles go in a really big way, will that put accident attorneys out of business and body shops out of business?
That's the hope. Um, the issue is there's 270 million cars on the road in the U.S. and currently they sell about 15,000 or 15 million new ones a year. So at 15 million new a year, if everything coming out today was fully autonomous, it's a long time before that whole car park transforms. So I would describe it as an evolution much more than a revolution. It's going to take a long, long time. In the meantime, predictive models, whether they're off a little bit or not, basically predict that accidents are going to decrease a couple percent a year, 1% to 2% a year from a frequency standpoint. But what we have in the industry today is just what you described. All this technology costs a lot of money. So the cost of repairing the car is escalating much faster than a normal inflation rate, because you've got so much electronics on the perimeter of the vehicle, and it takes so much additional parts compared to what it used to. It takes so much more additional labor in syncing up all the advanced driver assist systems and recalibrating them. So from a revenue perspective, the industry's got a lot of growth to come, even with technology hopefully declining the rate of accidents across the country. So it's a pretty healthy industry for a long, long time, even if a brand new car coming out today was never going to ever be able to wreck again. It'd still be a long time before accidents completely went away.
Yeah. And how many collision shops, approximately around 40,000 or so nationally? How many are out there?
Yeah, mid 30s is what the number that's pretty, it depends on what source you get, but somewhere around 35,000 or so. I would describe the industry as only about 25% consolidated right now. So there's still a long way to go. When you think about an industry probably consolidates up to about 65% before it's done. I view us as still got a long way to go before we get to any end to the consolidation. And probably, crystal ball wise, the industry probably gets a lot less locations over time, probably gets to about 20 to 25,000 locations, doing a lot more revenue per location than what's out there today. There's a lot of those 30 something thousand body shops that don't do much revenue at all. And it's going to be hard for those really small revenue locations to keep up with the investment needed in the equipment and technology to be able to fix the new cars. So they're able to hang in there today because of the average vehicle age being so old. But as the vehicles get newer and newer, it's going to be hard for those locations to stay in existence.
Yeah, makes total sense. Does your PE partner have a team that goes out looking for acquisitions, or is that something you're managing?
Yeah, we do that internally.
Yep. Do it internally. Okay.
Yeah, I literally meant like the PE partners staying out of the business is the best way to go. So it takes the trust and confidence in you to do that. But they really don't get into many parts of managing the business at all. I would see them getting involved if there was a big platform that we were going to do. That's when they would get involved in the M&A. But as far as, single shop to 10 to 20 shop acquisitions, that they're not involved in that at all. Our team handles that.
Okay, fantastic. From an overall alignment standpoint, what is your best practices around communicating productively a vision?
So this continues to evolve. Some of this social media work and podcast work is a byproduct of us trying to figure out at scale how to communicate the message all the way to the teammates on the shop floor. And that came from frustration of trying to get it there. A lot of our communication still filters through the management team, but then through 5 layers of management down to the shop floor, you've got that kind of game of telephone where the message gets changed a little, where they leave parts of it out or communicate what they feel is important. So we've made a lot of effort on building our own app where we release news to the organization, where we do videos to message to the entire team what we're thinking and what we're trying to do. So I would say from my seat and the executive seat, directly to the team is the way to eliminate lost in translation of the message. I would also say that learning as the company grows bigger, detail matters. So, as an example, I tell the story of if I would tell the team we're going to go build a building, they might think of in their mind, they might think of a shed. Another person might think of a single story, 3-bedroom house. Another might think of a mansion. Another might think of a skyscraper. It's my job and the leadership team's job to give all of those details that if you leave them up to the imagination, everybody's going to be marching in a different direction. So I continue to work at that, to continue to learn at that. The bigger it gets, the more the detail in the vision, the more the details matter when you're trying to tell people where you're trying to go. But I would say that that's the learn in it. If you want people to at scale march to the beat of the same drum, the details around that drum beat matter a lot. Otherwise, there's way too many different minds in that equation that aren't going to think exactly alike in order to be able to do it. So trying to simplify the communication chain and provide as much detail as possible are two things that we've concentrated on in communicating the vision and where we're headed.
Yeah, and I imagine it's a pretty good recruitment strategy on sharing this vision. If you have a successful path going forward, there's job security, there's all this stuff in there, especially over going to work for independent, shops out there. So that's talk about that.
Yeah, it's been a big deal because number one, we've gotten good at describing what's different about us. So we talk about being the only founder-led national company, and we own that because number one, we're the only ones who can say it. And number two, from an employee perspective, they know that I started out as a technician. They know that everything at a shop level I've done myself. So that means all the way to the highest levels of the company, we understand what their day-to-day looks like. We're not going to come with some crazy idea that doesn't work, that's going to frustrate them or make their life harder. It also gives a chance for those outside the company to hear the message and have it resonate with them. And that's exactly what you mentioned about recruiting. So us talking about why we're different and what we're trying to do resonates to people on the outside. And it's been awesome in attracting talent to the company. And again, that wasn't our initiative and what we set out to do from the beginning. It's just like a side benefit that you learn comes along over time. Now, that message is that today, when we were smaller, it was different. It was about why deal with us over the big company, right? It was about, look, I'm smart. In those days, I was like, well, you could go to that big national company if you want, but if you come do business with me, like you're going to deal directly with me. You can have my cell phone number. If there's an issue, you can call me directly. From an employee perspective, you can come to me directly, and we don't have to go through a bunch of different layers of approval to get something done for you. I can just do it myself. So it's a little bit of figuring out what makes you unique and special, and then talking about it. I feel like our goal in a really tribal industry is to balance both. We've got both the benefits of scale, which gives you a great career path if you're interested in that. It's a little bit of, we're going to have the relationship, so we're going to have a lot of cars to fix. If all you want is to be left alone and do your thing fixing cars, at least we're going to have cars to give you. And then in that tribal industry, giving out a message of why we do what we do in a way that resonates with them. And that's where it came, what you mentioned earlier, talking about creating a great employee environment. And it really simply just comes down to remembering what we're all about, which is helping people in a time of need. And as much as we can understand and remember that at all levels of the organization, we treat people differently because that's what we're here for. Find somebody who's in a time of need. They just lost their means of transportation. They just had an accident, and we're here to help them as an organization and a group of people. And it's pretty easy to get behind and have that resonate on a human to human basis.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I actually think, as listening to here, you've got the best of small and big, because the shops aren't huge in terms of numbers of employees, so it feels small, and there's the opportunity of big if they want to go that far. If they want to, be a technician and only do this, they can do it, but there's a growth path. So that's something I want to dig into a little bit. And it's been frustrating for me for a couple of decades now, listening to, certain outlets, media outlets talk about the only real jobs are these programming jobs and these, technical jobs. And I look at it and I say, oh my gosh, what an amazing career being a plumber, auto body, technician and everything that goes in there. These are really high paying, I think, incredible career paths to take, I think, for a lot of folks. And especially being in a company like yours, where if they want to take it to the next level and they show that value, they can actually do it. So talk about that a little bit. And the irony in all this to me is that AI is going to replace those jobs that they said were the only jobs to have, 15, 20 years ago.
It is pretty crazy thinking about it from that way. We're actually, as a company, on that mission to spread the word and advertise what a great opportunity the industry is, because for decades now, as an industry, we haven't done a great job of describing what a great career and opportunity it was. And so today we're trying to do that. And to do that, we're letting, first of all, our average technicians make $100,000 a year or more. So it is a good living, and you don't have to go to 4 years of college and take on a bunch of debt to do it. We have apprentice programs that train you, and we pay you while you learn. And so it's really a great opportunity that has always been that, but we haven't really talked about it in that way, because so much of the education system has been about needing to go to college, and that's going to really afford you the best opportunity. What we have the opportunity to do now is let everybody know, like, look, if college isn't for you, there are other paths to great career opportunities. And as you said, that's just that. I don't want to say just that, but that's at a technician level. From a career growth, if you want to enter into management and climb that ladder, there's tons of opportunity in a growing company like ours for that to come along. And really, that's the exciting thing about the growth for me, is we've been able to have everybody's lives transform as the company has grown, and they're able to not have to leave the company in order to advance their careers. It's just the word isn't out about it. I think it's changing, though, from any service-based industry. I think there's such a shortage of people. None of us can help but talk about it in order to get people more interested in it. And it's not just collision repair. Any kind of technicians or any kind of service professionals, these skills are in high demand today. So I think many industries have the same opportunity. It's just our part of that is explaining it to people so that they can weigh it as a better opportunity compared to what has been maybe the drumbeat of most of the education system for the last couple decades.
Yeah, to me, the purpose of an education is to create value in the world. And I think the way the machine is set up today is like, get a good grade, get a diploma, get a degree, get a job. And it's this machine that people are going through without really thinking about the value they want to create in the world. And I think the technician approach, what a rewarding career in my view. I always love actually doing that work. So from an employee standpoint, I could see why more and more would want to work with and for you, your company. If somebody's got a shop out there, an independent, what are the benefits for those individuals in selling to Crash Champions?
Yeah, so we have tried to position ourselves as a sell or as a acquirer of choice. And really, the way to do that is give confidence to the seller in what you're going to do with their business, with what's really their legacy. It's probably decades and decades of work that they've put into that business. The only reason they would look to sell is they're wanting to retire, reap the rewards of everything that they built, and they probably don't have, either the kids don't want it or can't run it or both. And so then they're looking to sell it, but they still care about the people that have worked for them. They still care about the business. And so the great thing about us is remember, I was only one shop 10 years ago. I was only 13 shops 5 years ago. So they kind of view me as one of them. And so it's been a unique advantage that we've had in that, the same things that have been important to them all these years in building the business have been important to me. And so it's a little bit of, we align in how we think about the industry. We align in how important we know the employees are. And that's been very helpful. Now, they're not going to sell to me for cheaper than they would somebody else in most cases. And so you have to solve the money part of the equation. But people are very much concerned with what's going to happen to their life's work, and they want to leave it in the hands of another company that they believe in, if that's possible. And so our thing to solve for is giving them confidence in what we're going to do when that location becomes part of Crash Champions. Our thing to solve for is giving them confidence that we're going to treat their employees well and bring them even more opportunity than they've had, because the company's bigger and can do that. So explaining that well has been a key to our success.
Yeah, preserving and growing or building on their legacy. That's a
Yes.
huge advantage. So I mean, it's interesting how when I started my company that became a global aerospace company, I was the first one on the floor doing the only process that we did, and I did virtually every other job as this thing grew to this global aerospace business. Uh, and that does bring a lot of credibility when the owner's kind of gone through all of that. We know enough to be dangerous about just about everything, and we can develop and help people, a lot more effectively. What was what's the difference today versus back when you were, 8 or 13 shops around decision making and risk? What was it like then, and how has it changed? It's only been 5 years, but I bet it's changed a lot.
Yeah, I tend to lean on the riskier side of things. I do believe that nothing truly great or worthwhile in life comes without risk. And so I tend to always be on the riskier side of things compared to others. I think as it's gotten bigger, what I've learned to do is communicate better what plan B might be. So, when it was just me and we were smaller, it would be, let's go. And then if it's not working, we'll pivot, we'll figure it out. Well, now with private equity investment, with syndicated debt, like, you have to give people confidence you're not going to run the thing off of a cliff, right? So you have to be able to communicate, what you're trying to do, but also communicate your plan. I call it plan B, but it really would be, if this doesn't work to fruition, then what are we going to do? What's the pivot going to be? And I think there's always usually a pivot. Nothing goes exactly as planned. That's how I would describe it. I'm not afraid of the risk because I believe so much in what we're doing. I've just gotten a lot better at communicating what the pivots could be and what the downside kind of management to the risk is going to be, in order to build confidence of both the team that's with me and investors and lenders.
Yeah, it sounds like taking on the weight of additional stakeholders and putting yourself in their shoes as you go through all this. I love that you do that. I admire your leadership style. It's been interesting researching you and how aligned our thinking is around this stuff. Trust has always been, organizational trust, a pillar of everything I've done because it makes everything go better. Talk about trust, what it means to you. I've heard you talk quite a bit about it, actually.
Yeah, it means so much because things are going to go wrong. And if people trust you, they'll have confidence that you're going to make it right. And that can come from a simple thing like a repair on a vehicle, to you got somebody's paycheck wrong, to direction of the company and confidence in it from a perspective of an investor or lender. We talk about it in the day to day as really every interaction we have is a chance to build on trust or tear it down. And so how we treat every interaction with each other, with customers, with vendors is a chance to build on that trust if you handle it correctly. So we do our best to remind everyone of that and to have them realize that in their day-to-day interactions with people, because it is that big of a deal. Everything you do either builds on trust or deteriorates it over time if you're not careful. So it's really a fundamental to interacting with other people in my experience and opinion. And I would think 8 different companies that to scale that you've done it probably transforms across all companies, because it's really a human need to trust one another if you're going to accomplish something big together.
Yeah, it is. I always describe organizational trust as do you do or did you do the thing that you agreed to do? Doesn't mean you're not a trustworthy person. You can, watch our kids or whatever. It's at work. And usually folks would choose to do something instead of what they agreed to do because they just thought this would create more value or be more valuable. And I remember one of the company's 64 leaders, I had most of them in the room. I said, hey, we're going to do an exercise, organizational trust, rank 1 to 5. How trustworthy are they from an organizational trust standpoint, doing what they said they would do? And it was eye-opening because we did it in front of everybody. And there were a number of ones in the room. And then why does this matter? And yes, you've got good reasons, but you've got all these other things that the effect was worse because they were counting on you to build on what they were doing. But I love being transparent that way with everything, numbers, where we're going, all the leaders and, how they show up as a leader, how foundational ready they are to grow, how good they are at the standard operating stuff to get great results. Everybody could see everything across the board. What's that transparency like in your organization?
Yeah. So even when I was small, sharing the numbers was super critical. I knew, and I probably thought this way when I was really young, like, oh, you don't want to let people see the profit of the business, for example, to pick something. Um, I I learned really quickly that showing everybody everything is way better route to go. First of all, they imagine the profit's way more than it is. So if you're not telling them the real story, their imagination is going to go in a direction that's probably not true. But second, it's as simple as you can't hit a target you can't see, and you can't to not share information and not share numbers. To me, from somebody I learned from, is equivalent to sending a basketball team out on the court, telling them to go do their best, and I'll let you know in a few days if you won or lost. Like, how are they going to win that game if they don't know the score? So to me, you have to, and we have data for days for that very reason. You have to know how you're doing, and the team has to be able to see it, because they can help you. If you let people know where you want to go and you let them know where they are, they'll unite in your effort to get to the target. But they can't do it if you're on a need to know kind of basis, or on a not going to share things with them. It makes it way too difficult.
Yeah. Why do you think so many smaller business owners are afraid to do that? They just absolutely won't let their team members see the numbers.
I assume it's because they think that the team's going to be upset with what they see. It's the only reason I can figure out. There also may be that they don't know, they don't have the data like they need to either. Like, maybe they might only know what the bank account balance is in some cases I've seen, and not really know how profitable or how well their business is doing anyway. But if in a scenario where they know, they must assume that the team's going to be upset by it, and that hasn't been my experience. Now, I'm in an industry that, like, high single digit to 10% EBITDA is a good number. And so it's not like we've got enormous profitability anyway. There might be industries out there that are super profitable, but I'm guessing that they just think people will be upset by what they see, but I don't think that's true, especially if you talk about the numbers and explain it to them.
Yeah, and I've never seen a case yet where if the numbers are presented in an appropriate way and everyone can see how they contribute to it and it's a team sport, where it didn't work really well. So much better. If you do it in the wrong way, but yes, you're right. Revenue does not equal profit. And revenue times two doesn't equal profit, which is some of some of the stories in there too. Yeah, your podcast is. Have you started the Pod Crash podcast yet, or are we getting close to a first episode coming out?
Yeah, we're getting close. We're doing a few ahead of time, so we have a little bit prepared before we go, but we haven't launched yet. But soon now, within the next 60 days, we'll be launching it. And I talk about, did you sit down and think things through? I never in my life dreamed of being a podcast host, but I think there's a great opportunity in communicating. Again, this started from just to our own team, what we can learn from other leaders, what we can learn from other people, and how we can apply it in our business and in our life. And this is just an opportunity to expand that and expand the people that we know. It's getting me out of my comfort zone because I also wasn't, I was never in front of a camera. I was never communicating through any kind of media sources. So it's very much a learning thing and stretching me on being able to communicate better. So I would say it's more solutioning for things that I need to improve on and that the company wants to do even better than it is a dream of having a podcast. It's just I view it as a tool and the next thing in kind of the learning phase, which will advance both my skill, my team's skill, and the company's reach.
Yeah, I love that. And for whatever it's worth, you have a great voice and presence, but I think most importantly, your experiential wisdom is really rare. So being a polished podcast host doesn't matter to me. I want to know that there's some substance behind it, and your experiential wisdom is incredible.
Well, what I do, like this one, I'll rewatch it and I'm going to see about 10 spots where you asked the question where I could have said something so helpful to the audience and I missed it. So it's a learning curve of really learning how to continue to improve communication, tell people things that will be helpful to them and that matters. I'm going to have said so many uhs and whatever else that I'm going to hate as well. But it's really not about that as much as it is the information and experiences that you've had. How do you tell people about it, communicate in a way that help them? Because that's really what you want to do in everything you do, be helpful and contribute to the success of others.
Well, you accomplished that today 100%. And there's not many leaders at your level that are so passionate about still growing personally and professionally to get out of the way so the company can grow. A lot think they've kind of arrived and they know everything. So everything about how you showed up today has been amazing. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, Matt, this has been a great experience. Was there any one big thing that stood out in our conversation today?
One big thing, really, understanding the culture and how key that is. I think people, especially in the big financial and private equity world that I live in today, I think it tends to be discounted in the minds of those that might not be in the weeds of it. But from your questions, you understand the importance of it, and I've certainly learned the importance of it. That in the things that are crucial for success of a business, culture, if the culture is right, it can eat a lot of the other things for lunch. And so it's the key to getting that right, I think, is underestimated way too often.
Yeah. My biggest takeaway listening to you is doing always what's best for the entity will be what's best for you and all stakeholders in there, and
Yeah.
not out of balance. So I applaud you for doing that.
Yeah. It ends up driving the most value anyway. So it's kind of easy because it ends up accomplishing better things for the individuals anyhow. It's great.
Well, easy for you and it's intuitive, but it's not for, in my experience, most leaders. So hats off to you for doing that. And Matt, again, thank you for being here. I've gotten a lot out of this. I'll watch this again as well, and I'll look for your podcast.
Thanks so much.
All right. And this has been the Show Your Value podcast. If you got some value out of today's episode, I got a lot. I'm sure you did as well. Please like and leave a review and subscribe. And until next time, show your value to the world.